So I have just got back from the cinema, literally from the cinema. Like, I've literally walked through the door, just got myself a drink. Where is it? Oh, there it is. I mean, this isn't a sponsor or anything, but here we go. Look, a half-drunk Dr. Pepper bottle. You know what I hate most about these bottles now is the fact that, you know, when you open these bottles, like, oh god, that was a big tss, you know, literally, look, the cap is still, that is annoying. That really does bug me. Anyway, enough talk of Dr. Pepper, and literally, I've just got back from the cinema, and I do apologise that this movie wrap-up episode is slightly delayed. It is because I wanted to talk about a movie at the very end of this episode of the movie wrap-up. So, without further ado, let's see what movies I've been watching this week, and trust me, by the way, there is a lot. You're watching Steve's Movie Wrap-Up episode 27 right here on my YouTube channel, SteveOfficial. The first movie we'll be reviewing in this episode is Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. So Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, I gave 1.5 star over on Letterboxd. Rebel Moon... One second, guys. Oh, that's better, I think. Is that better? Or is that... Hang on. That's better. Oh, sorry, I needed a fan. I just needed a fan. Anyway, Rebel Moon is Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. I gave 1.5 star over on Letterboxd. That's a nice breeze coming through. Let me just try and can I just lift that up a little bit? There we are. Better? Slightly better? Maybe better? What if I move it up there? Slightly better? Oh, even more better. Sorry, anyway, Rebel Moon is a movie that was directed by Zack Snyder. Yes, the same Zack Snyder who directed Justice League and later on released the 4-hour Snyder Cut version of that film. But he's back and directed basically a Star Wars ripoff over on Netflix. Now, while this movie was initially released basically around Christmas time in 2023, it's taken me up until now to watch the movie because that's how much time I needed before I watched this film. I just really wasn't that bothered about watching it. In fact, it was one of the films that was at the bottom of my watch list on Letterboxd. But nevertheless, though, did I enjoy this film? I don't understand why Zack Snyder pitched this movie to Lucasfilm, got it turned down by Lucasfilm, who does the Star Wars movies, and then pitched this idea to Netflix, who greenlit this movie, and then made this movie possible for it to be released on their streaming service. I mean, let's face it, there are moments throughout this that I could easily tell they were basically referencing Star Wars at one point. There's even a droid that resembles C-3PO from the Star Wars franchise. So yes, this is basically a Star Wars ripoff, which sadly I didn't enjoy, and I can understand why Lucasfilm didn't want to make this film and have it as part of their Star Wars universe. Some of the scenes in this are quite dark, and I don't mean it in a way where it can be brutal or anything like that. I mean, it is as in, like, who on earth turned the brightness down? Kind of dark. So some scenes for me were pretty dark that I couldn't see on my TV screen. The script itself I thought was rather weak, and the movie itself in terms of plot was just so weak and so boring, really. And now you can understand why I've left this movie for so long up until now to watch it. I will say, though, that despite not all the actors giving it their all, but Sofia Boutella was outstanding as one of the main leads for the movie, which was great to see. I can see why this movie was more about character development, though, because, of course, this is the first part out of a 2-parter story, so I'm really hoping that in the second part of the movie, which I'll be reviewing next, I'm really hoping that it does feature a decent payoff, because this movie didn't have a decent payoff at all. If anything, it was more anticlimactic more than anything. But Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, is available to stream on Netflix globally. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scar Giver. And then, of course, we move on to Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scar Giver, which I gave 1 star over on Letterboxd. The 50th movie that has released in 2024, according to my movies in 2024 list on Letterboxd. And sadly, it's not a 5-star rating or a 4-star rating or a 3-star rating or a 2-star rating. Instead, this is a 1-star rating. Why? Because even though I have part 1 of Rebel Moon half a star more, but this movie sucked even more than the first one. Zack Snyder, please never ever do anything with this Rebel Moon series or franchise ever again. Regardless, whether it's a film or a TV spin-off, the characters in this movie are just so bland and so boring. The dialogue in this is so dire to listen and watch through, and also the performances that all the characters give off in here are basically wooden. It's really not great, and like I said in my previous review, I can totally see, if not see more clearly now, why Lucasfilm rejected the idea that Snyder had for the Star Wars universe. It really wouldn't have worked, and I don't think it would have been, it would have gone down well with the Star Wars fan base. It wouldn't have done with me anyways, and trust me, so far in the Star Wars fan base, a lot of people don't really like The Last Jedi. What I hate about both parts of the movie is the fact that they use slow motion shots so much within both films. So the first movie has a running time of 2 hours 14 minutes. I would probably say shave off around 30 minutes of that, and the film is 1 hour and 45 minutes. And when I say shave off 30 minutes of that, I mean take out all the slow motion shots. And the same with this movie. Yes, it does have a shorter running time than part 1, clocking in at 2 hours 3 minutes, but take out, let's say, about 20 minutes from this movie, it basically has a running time of 1 hour 43 minutes without the slow motion shots. I just don't get why Zack Snyder is so fascinated with slow motion shots in both the movies. It doesn't bring any tension to the table or anything like that. Sometimes when you're at a cinema or watching a movie on streaming at home and there's a really tense scene, they have the use of slow motion scenes to keep the tension going for a little while longer. Within both parts of this movie, the slow motion is just slotted in like it's nothing, even when there's like less tense scenes going on. Again, they're just slotted in, which does get really annoying after a while. It annoyed me with part 1, and it has annoyed me with part 2 as well. Once again, just like part 1, there was dark scenes in this which I couldn't see. Did I need to adjust my TV settings to watch this movie? Maybe. I just needed to. And again, this movie was released back in April 2024, so there was a few months gap between both movies being released on Netflix, and what I love about that is part 1 of the movie is forgettable and rather bland and boring, which makes people not want to watch part 2. And even if those people out there who watch part 2 have faith that things may have improved, well, sadly it didn't, so I can understand that some people would have been left underwhelmed by both of these films. Now, I do know that later this summer, Zack Snyder is planning to release basically a Snyder Cut of Rebel Moon on Netflix, which will be R-rated, otherwise known as a rated 18 for those in the UK, which I believe he has said will be completely different compared to the 2 films that we have seen already. Now, this does make me curious to watch it, because I want to know what the film does, what he does differently with the R-rated cut compared to what he did with these 2 films. I do actually believe he did say that the R-rated cut will be set in an alternate universe to part 1 and part 2 that we've already seen. And I do know with it being R-rated that there will be sex scenes, violence, and maybe some added gore as well. I'm not too fond of the sex scenes. I mean, come on. You don't really see sex scenes in Star Wars, do you? But I am a guy who's happy to see some violence and gore scenes in movies. And I'll tell you what, if the R-rated cut that releases on Netflix later this year has a higher star rating than both of the movies I have reviewed for you guys, then I will be shocked. I will say this though, Zack Snyder, please don't make the R-rated cut of Rebel Moon nearly 4 hours long or over 4 hours long, just like you did with Justice League. There is one final thing that I will say with both parts of Rebel Moon, and that is that there are some stunning scenery and stunning visuals that you do get to see on screen during the moments that you do get to see whether you're watching this on your TV or tablet. But Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, is available to stream on Netflix globally alongside Part 1. Problemista. I gave 3.5 stars over on Letterboxd. I really enjoyed this movie a lot, and the thing about A24, the production company behind Problemista, is that they can make really weird and bizarre films that has some wacky moments, and trust me, this movie does have its bizarre, zany and wacky moments, but A24 does tell a story which may hit close to home for some people, and sadly for me, this didn't, but I do know that there will be people who go in to watching this film and instantly the story or the storytelling will just hit close to home, especially those who have visas when living in another country. Julio Torres is an actor that I haven't heard of before, but he does play the main lead of the film, and I will say that he did an exceptional performance of portraying the character of Alejandro, an aspiring toy designer whose visa is about to run out while he is living in the USA, and the story takes us, the viewers, on that journey of how he can get his visa renewed so that he can stay and remain in America, especially as he's there for work as well. Tilda Swinton also stars in this movie, and I'll be honest, I don't know how people will feel about watching this movie, but while I wouldn't say that this is the perfect movie that A24 has ever made, and yes, the storytelling and the plot was believable, but I will say that I did enjoy the first 2 acts rather well, even though this movie does have its quirkiness in it, which a lot of people will enjoy, and I did enjoy the quirkiness as well. But there are times where the tone is lowered to tell the story as well. I thought the pacing wasn't too bad though, and the dialogue and script in the movie Problemista was also pretty decent as well. The Fall Guy. The Fall Guy, I gave 4 stars over on Letterboxd. So, I really enjoyed The Fall Guy so much. I knew this wasn't going to be a perfect movie because, let's face it, it does have some issues, but I didn't really care about that, because what I really loved about this film is the character development of Colt, played by Ryan Gosling, and his love he has for director Jodie, who is played by Emily Blunt. After suffering an accident whilst working on the set of a movie, Gosling's character has 18 months off work, and despite the back pain he suffered and how his back was still pretty much suffering from the full 18 months later, a producer called Gail, who is played by Hannah Waddingham, gives Colt a call and tells him that Jodie needs him on the set of a new movie that she's directing, in which he happily agrees, but as he gets there and does a stunt on the set of the movie and she finds out that it's Colt who did the stunt, she is less than impressed to see him again. Now, I will say this about the movie. I had a fun time with this movie. There was moments that I enjoyed with this movie. There is the movie soundtrack that is really awesome as well, and I love the music soundtrack as well, especially in the movie as the movie opens with the song I Was Made for Loving You by Kiss. I was made for loving you, baby. You were made for loving me. Anyway, so anyway, you just got to sing along. You just got to sing along. But instantly, as that song started playing at the beginning of the film, I knew that I was in for a good time. I did think that the chemistry between Blunt and Gosling's characters was rather interesting as well, but at the same time, it was kind of one of those stories as to will they or won't they kind of stories, which has been done to death in movies many times before. So you know what will happen at the end of the movie, and I'm sure that's not me giving anything away about the ending of the movie. The stunts, though, was pretty awesome, and despite the fact that I was complaining about Zack Snyder using slow motion too much in my recent review for Rebel Moon on Netflix, but for The Fall Guy, though, I thought that the slow motion was needed during accurate moments of the movie, which I thought was great. The pacing was okay, I would say. I know that the film was over 2 hours long, and some people say that the movie didn't need to be that long, which I do agree. I think some scenes could have been cut, really, and some scenes didn't make too much sense, but again, I wouldn't complain too much about it because I still had an enjoyable time viewing this movie on the big screen. Is this a movie I would happily watch again? Definitely yes. I did love the action scenes, and I did love the music that is in this movie as well. And I think David Leitch, who directed this movie, did a great job at making a movie which I thought was rather fun to watch. I did enjoy the scene where Colt was sat in the car listening to Taylor Swift's song All Too Well, and was looking back on all the things him and Jodie had done in the past and crying in his car. I thought that was funny. Is this also a movie I would buy and keep on digital when it releases? Yes, definitely, so don't be surprised if this is a movie that I go back to later this year once I have brought it to keep, and I talk about it briefly again later this year. So The Fall Guy is out now in cinemas and theatres worldwide. The Strangers 2008. So I have watched The Strangers from 2008, which I gave 2.5 stars over on Letterboxd. Safe to say that this is the first time that I have watched The Strangers 2008. I have seen the sequel to this movie in the past, but definitely haven't watched this one. That is until now. I really enjoyed this one. The only problem I had was the running time. But then again, though, by the looks of what's to come in the planned trilogy, we are going to be getting all the Strangers films that have a running time of around 90 minutes. What I loved most about this movie is the fact that it's full of suspension and intrigue as well. It keeps you, as the viewer, engaged within the movie. I also love the fact that you don't really see much of the Strangers doing all these things to the home that this couple are staying in. We do see them more prominently within the third and final act of the movie, though. But again, to keep the added suspense going, I love the fact that this film didn't show them too much when they first showed up at the house. I will say this as well, the final moment of this movie made me jump out of my skin. There was a couple of moments within this movie that actually did make me jump a few times. I won't lie, but I did enjoy this one a lot, and this would be one that I think I would happily watch again. The Strangers Pray at Night. So The Strangers Pray at Night I gave 2 stars over on Letterboxd. I have seen this movie before without watching the original first, but that being said though, I do feel as though you don't have to watch the original first before watching the sequel, as they do in their own way tell their own story separately. Before the release of The Strangers Chapter 1 releasing in cinemas on Friday the 17th of May, I decided to give this movie a rewatch. One of the more iconic scenes in this movie is the pool scene. That is one scene that you can take away from this movie that will forever be iconic and will be the scene that this movie will be memorable for the most. That being said though, did I enjoy this? Well, yes, it does tell a different story, and I do wonder as to how the story will be told in the upcoming trilogy. I guess it will be one story told in 3 parts, hence the chapters. But I am looking forward to seeing what the new take does that's different from both of these movies that I have now watched. The horror and the suspense was still here, just like the original, and the jump scares were once again here as well. But the question that I think of all us are begging to get answered is, who the hell is Tamara? I really hope that this question does finally get answered in the new trilogy, and I hope we do get to meet Tamara in the new trilogy as well. Now, before I do move on to the next movie, The Strangers Chapter 1 is available to watch now in cinemas and theatres worldwide. I'm going to be honest with you, I've seen the critic reviews for the film. Critics aren't loving it. I'm guessing from like the general public, you know, like just general theatre goers and movie goers and stuff like that, they're kind of a bit mixed on the film. So I am planning to watch The Strangers Chapter 1 on the big screen next week. So in next week's episode of the movie wrap up, I will talk about The Strangers Chapter 1. But for now though, I just thought it'd be nice for me to go back, revisit and visit the Strangers franchise, and just get up to speed with the other two films that came out back in 2008 and 2018 as well. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I gave 3.5 stars over on Letterboxd. So a star-studded lineup within this movie as John Lithgow, Brian Cox, James Franco, Andy Serkis and Tom Felton all star in this movie after a scientist is trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's and is testing out a trial on apes. And after finding that the scientist is nearing a breakthrough for a cure, they notice that pet chimpanzee Caesar is taken well to the drug a lot more. Excuse me, I just burped then. A lot more. I tell you what, I really can't wait to see what they do with the future of this franchise. I do remember seeing Planet of the Apes a few years ago, so this is a rewatch just like the other two movies that are within the modern franchise of the movie so far. Sadly though, spoiler alert, I only managed to watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I was planning to watch Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes before seeing Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I'll get into very shortly, but I kind of ran out of time this week, so therefore I only watched the first one and that was it. But the Planet of the Apes movies has such a rich history within cinema. There's the classic Planet of the Apes, then there's the movie that was released in 2001, and then there's the modern era which has started out with Rise of the Planet of the Apes and continues on with the next two movies, which, by the way, even though I haven't watched, well, I have watched in the past, but obviously I haven't watched this week, I will review them, I will watch them or rewatch them, and I'll review them hopefully in my next episode of the movie wrap up, so we'll see what happens with that. But ahead of the release of the fourth movie in the modern version of the franchise, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I thought I would give this movie a rewatch along with the other two, which I will do soon. I will say that the CGI in this is pretty decent, and I do think that the story is told in a really good way. I love the fact that this movie does, in a way, set itself up ready for the next movie as well. I thought the script and dialogue in this was pretty decent. Andy Serkis as Caesar was really good as well. I really hope that Andy Serkis continues the role for Caesar going forward in the future of this franchise, which, by the way, he didn't, did he? Because Caesar... Actually, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil it. No, because in case there's people out there that haven't seen at least the modern era of Planet of the Apes. Anyway, I'm not going to say what happens to Caesar, okay? But anyway, let's continue though. And I thought the pacing was rather decent, given the fact that this movie has a running time of 1 hour and 45 minutes. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is available to stream on Disney Plus, alongside Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes as well. Tarot. Now, before I move on to the last movie that I watched this week, which, by the way, spoiler alert, is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I am going to speak about another film that I watched on the big screen this week, which was Tarot, which I gave 1.5 star over on Letterboxd. So Tarot just had some issues, and yes, I did pay $10.99 to go and see this at a cinema, which I don't very often go to unless the cinema that I usually go to doesn't have any showings or has late night showings of a film that I want to see. That being said though, was Taro worth paying $10.99? Honestly, I wouldn't have said yes. It was because this film didn't really do much in the sense that it was original. There was quite a few cliches that you're so used to seeing in other horror movies. There was barely any gore, and even though the kills, while looking gnarly, but we just see cutaways. For example, the first death we see blood splatter over a smartphone. The second death we see, again, we see blood splatter over a train. The characters in this, for me anyways, were quite underdeveloped, and this film literally starts off at night with these friends hanging out in the woods or near a house where they were staying, and then instantly going to find some alcohol only to find these tarot cards. What I found quite coincidental about all of this is the fact that there's a friend within the friend group who knew how to do tarot readings, who studied astrology and zodiac signs and could read everyone's tarot readings within the friendship group. And what's also coincidental is in this is the fact that pretty much all the friends in this friendship group had different star signs, which is, by the way, possible, but none of them had the same star signs, if that makes sense. Anyways, did I really care about these characters? Not really. The only character I really did like out of them all was the character of Paxton, who is played by Tom Holland's Spider-Man era star Jacob Batalon. Out of all the cast members, he was the only one that really stood out in terms of all the other cast members that we have within the movie and story. There's no other recognisable faces attached to this movie that I have seen star in other projects before in the past, before I saw this film. I think genuinely 2024 for horror so far hasn't been great, and I really do hope that the tables do turn as we do go into the second half of the year, because I do miss good horror movies that I can happily talk about and praise about. But that being said, Taro was also a movie made by the same company who brought us Madame Web earlier this year. Maybe this was the horror movie version of Madame Web. Who knows? I know that the film clocks in at 1 hour and 32 minutes, but I just wish there was a lot more character development so that at least I cared about the characters when they were killed off one by one. I will give the movie some positive stuff because I do think that the creatures we see and the mythical ones were pretty awesome in terms of design. I just wish there was more horror to this story. That would have been nice, and yes, there was jump scares in here, but none that sadly made me jump out of my skin. It almost felt like I was expecting the jump scares to happen, really. Taro is available in cinemas and theatres worldwide, and I'm sure it will soon be available on streaming. I don't think this will be a film that I'll be getting on digital when it becomes available to buy and rent. I think I'm happy to have seen this movie the once, and that's it really. I don't think it requires a rewatch. I will also say this, this movie, fun fact, was also right at the very bottom of my watch list of 590 plus movies that I have on my watch list on Letterboxd as well. But that's not because I wasn't interested in watching this, because I was. It's just there's been so many movies announced and added to my Letterboxd watch list since I added this movie to my watch list about a year or so ago. Also, I would have preferred if this movie had kept its original title, which was originally going to be called Horror Scope. The name would have been far better than Taro. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And for one final time in this episode of the movie wrap-up, we're returning back to the Planet of the Apes franchise. Not with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, not with War of the Planet of the Apes, but we are returning with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is the movie that I literally have not long got back from seeing, and now I'm reviewing for the movie wrap-up. Hence why this week's episode of the movie wrap-up has sadly been delayed. But I gave this movie 4 stars over on Letterboxd. I'll tell you what, in terms, apart from Taro, right, The Fall Guy, great movie. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, great movie. Both films have got 4-star ratings from me, which is great. But Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is the 4th movie in the Planet of the Apes franchise, and I must say that I really did enjoy this. What a wonderful day indeed it was to watch this movie. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was such a delightful and wonderful movie to experience on the big screen, and I would definitely recommend watching this on the big screen, if not the biggest screen possible. Sadly for me, I don't have an IMAX theatre locally to me, so therefore I couldn't watch this in IMAX. But if you have an IMAX cinema nearby or an IMAX screening in your local cinema, then God, you're so lucky. But I thought the visuals in this movie were brilliant, beautiful and gorgeous to look at. The CGI was on top form, especially when it came to the flying birds that we see throughout the film. And of course the apes themselves. I thought they were rather decent. I also love the fact that, yes, this may be the 4th film in the franchise, but at the beginning of the movie, at the start of the first act, it tells the story so far from the previous 3 movies, particularly about Caesar, so I did like that. I did watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but sadly I didn't get time to watch Dawn or War of the Planet of the Apes before seeing Kingdom at the cinema. There was bits of dialogue in here which I thought was rather funny, particularly when one of the main antagonist apes that we follow throughout the movie, called Noah, learns an expletive word through another main character called May, who is a human, by the way. I thought that was rather funny. The action scenes were pretty decent when we did have action sequences too, with apes fighting other apes. I really can't wait to see what they do and where they go next with the franchise, and I will definitely be seated to see what they do with the franchise next. I don't want to compare this to 20th Century Studios' other successful franchise that the studio makes, which is Avatar, but there was times where I felt like I was watching Avatar, but except with apes in their own kingdom and not in Pandora. I say this because both movies give you the escapism that is watching a movie, and that's what I enjoy most, is the fact that sometimes when it comes to movies like Planet of the Apes and Avatar, you can easily switch off, escape the real world and lean into this one, and that's what I also love about this movie and franchise. I will be honest though, and this is the only negative bit of criticism that I'll give to this movie, and that is the running time. 2.5 hours is the running time for this movie, and at times it did feel like it's running time, but other moments throughout though, it seemed like the movie was going rather quickly, particularly when there was action sequences going on. But Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is available to watch worldwide in cinemas and theatres now, and it should be releasing on Disney Plus a little bit later on in 2024. And there we go. That is all the movies that I have watched this week. That is a lot of movies, by the way. Some of them have been on streaming, others have been on the big screen as well. But a massive thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. As always, feel free to let me know what movies you've been watching this past week, whether it's old, new, your favourites, your re-watches, your on streaming or in cinemas. Feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. As always, love to hear from you guys. And if you are new around here and you like what you see and you want to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button down below to see more and become a Stevo. So your next YouTube video will be out tomorrow, which is, I don't even know, it's Monday. I know it's Monday. I think it's Monday the 19th. Monday the 19th of May 2024 at 4 PM UK time. That is when my weekly vlog, my 200th weekly vlog, is being released, by the way. Who thought that, you know, 5 years later, I'll be releasing my 200th weekly vlog for you guys to enjoy and to watch. But anyway, lots coming up in that episode. But from me, for now though, it's goodbye. Thank you for watching. Fingers crossed, next episode of the movie wrap-up will be coming up next Sunday at 4 PM UK time, at its usual time. But for now though, goodbye. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again in my next YouTube video.